The memory that never left it began with a memory I had never been able to shake, a flicker of static, a distorted voice, and an image that should not have been there. I was only 12 when I stumbled upon the video, sitting alone in the dim glow of our old desktop computer. Back then, the internet was more of a wilderness. No rules, no structure, just links that pulled you deeper into places you shouldn't go. I don't remember what I was searching for that night, but I remember the video. It wasn't labeled, no title, no description, just a broken thumbnail that looked like a darkened room. I clicked without hesitation, and that decision would stay with me for years. At first, the screen went black, the kind of black where you almost think nothing is going to happen. Then the static started, sharp and loud, making me flinch. The video didn't have the polished look of something produced. It felt wrong, raw, like it wasn't meant to be seen by anyone. Then, for a split second, there was a figure in the frame. A person, or what I thought was a person, standing just at the edge of the light. The frame glitched, colors smeared across the screen, and the sound became a low, trembling hum. That was the moment I felt it, a chill so heavy that I swore someone was behind me. I slammed the monitor off, but the image burned itself into my head. For years, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just some corrupted file, a weird video that my young mind twisted into something more sinister. But it wasn't just the image that haunted me, it was the sound. That hum. Sometimes at night, when the house went quiet, I swore I could still hear it. I never told anyone, not my friends, not my family. How could I explain that a meaningless clip from the internet had lodged itself in my brain like a splinter? Even as I grew older, went to high school, then college, the memory clung to me. Some nights I'd wake up sweating, certain I'd heard that distorted hum again. Then, last month, something strange happened. While browsing a forgotten forum late at night, I stumbled across a thread with a title that made my blood run cold. Anyone remember the Humming Man video? I froze. My eyes locked on the words as if they had been waiting for me. Dozens of users were sharing fragments of memories, some eerily similar to mine. Descriptions of static, of a shadowy figure, of that same unnatural hum. I wasn't crazy. Other people had seen it too. The relief I felt was almost immediately drowned by a deeper, more disturbing realization. If the video was real, then maybe there was a way to find it again. That night, for the first time in over a decade, I opened myself to the possibility of searching for it. The thought terrified me, but it also consumed me. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed to know what I had seen, why it existed, and why it had burrowed into my mind like a parasite. Something in that video wasn't right, and now that I knew others had been haunted by it too, I couldn't just walk away. The hunt had begun again, and deep down, I already feared that this time, I might actually find it. The hunt begins. The forum thread was like a rabbit hole, deeper and stranger the longer I stared at it. Each post seemed to echo something I thought only I had remembered. Descriptions of static, fragmented frames, and most disturbingly, that hum. Some users claimed they had seen the video in the early 2000s, while others swore it resurfaced briefly on obscure file-sharing sites before disappearing again. A few posts hinted that anyone who tried to track it down too far ended up regretting it, though they never explained why. That kind of vague warning should have been enough to make me back off, but instead, it ignited something in me. For the first time, I wasn't alone with the memory. Others had seen it too. I spent hours scrolling through old forum archives, following broken links and outdated threads. Many of the links led nowhere, dead ends, error messages, vanished pages that felt like digital ghosts. But a pattern started to emerge. Several people mentioned a specific username, one that kept popping up in different communities over the years. The name was simple, almost bland, Watcher_88. Supposedly, they had once uploaded fragments of the video, brief clips that were immediately taken down. No one knew who they were, and no one had heard from them in years. But their posts lingered like breadcrumbs scattered across the ruins of the early internet. The more I searched, the more obsessed I became. I stopped noticing how many hours I was pouring into the hunt, how the glow of the screen was the only light in my room. Coffee cups stacked beside my desk, and unopened messages from friends sat ignored on my phone. Every small discovery, a half-broken screenshot, a corrupted download link, a vague recollection from another user, felt like progress, even if it only raised more questions. My world narrowed down to that one obsession. Find the video, prove it was real, and maybe, finally, understand why it had haunted me for so long. It wasn't long before the search began to bleed into my dreams. I'd fall asleep at my desk and wake up with the echo of static in my ears, convinced I had almost found something important before it slipped away. Once, I dreamed I was sitting at my computer, watching the video again, only this time the figure in the shadows turned its head toward me. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, only to realize that the low hum in the dream had followed me into waking. Though when I held my breath, I couldn't tell if it was real or just the silence playing tricks. One night, after another fruitless search, I nearly gave up. Then I noticed something buried in the forum thread, a reply with no text, only a broken image link. Out of habit, I inspected the HTML, and there it was, a faint trail leading to an external archive site I had never heard of. The link was barely functional, cobbled together with numbers and letters, but it was still alive. For a moment, my heart raced with the same panic I had felt as a child staring at the original video. My mouse hovered over the link, and I realized I had reached the point of no return. Clicking it might finally bring me face to face with the thing that had haunted me for years, or it might drag me into something I wasn't ready for. The link led me to a website that felt wrong the moment it loaded. It wasn't polished or modern. No logos, no navigation, just a blank white page with a few scattered text boxes, as though it hadn't been touched in decades. At the bottom, half hidden in the code, was a single download button labeled fragment_01.avi. My chest tightened. The rational part of me screamed to stop, to close the browser and delete my history, but my hand moved on its own. I clicked. The file downloaded almost instantly, unnervingly fast, as if it had been waiting. When I opened the file, the media player stuttered at first, flickering like it was struggling to process something it wasn't meant to. Then the static began, sharp and familiar, drilling straight into my nerves. The screen showed nothing at first, just the kind of visual snow you'd expect from an untuned TV. But then the image flickered, just for a heartbeat, and I froze. A room, dimly lit, empty, except for what looked like an old wooden chair in the middle. The static swallowed it again before I could process more, and my heart hammered as if I'd seen something forbidden. That I leaned closer to the screen, holding my breath, waiting for the image to return. Instead, the hum started. That low, trembling note I remembered so vividly from childhood. Hearing it again after all these years was like having a scar torn open. My body reacted before my mind could, chills racing across my arms, my stomach knotting. I should have stopped, should have pulled the plug on the whole thing, but I couldn't. I needed to see more. The hum deepened, vibrating the speakers until the screen flashed again. This time, the figure was there, not entirely visible, not in full clarity, but just enough to know it was watching. It stood behind the chair, half buried in shadows. Its shape was human, but distorted in small ways the camera seemed unable to capture correctly, like its outline bent against the edges of the frame. It didn't move, didn't breathe, but I felt its presence bleeding through the screen. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, the video cut to black. The hum lingered for several seconds more, growing louder until I thought my speakers might burst, and then silenced that I sat in the glow of the monitor, stunned and shaking. It had been real. The memory that haunted me all these years wasn't just some childish nightmare. I had found proof. Yet instead of relief, dread settled heavy in my chest. Because if this fragment was out there, then more pieces had to exist. And if I could find one, then maybe something, or someone, was leaving them for me to find. The afterglow of static, I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that chair, that figure lurking in the shadows behind it. The silence of my room pressed in like a weight, and I kept glancing at the corners, half expecting something to emerge. The worst part was the hum. I could still hear it, faint and steady, as though it had lodged itself in my skull. I unplugged my speakers, then even turned off the computer, but the sound didn't fade. It lingered in the quiet, threading through my thoughts like a parasite that refused to let go. By morning, I felt hollow, my head buzzing with exhaustion. The world outside looked unchanged, the sky pale and cloudy, cars rolling down the street. But something in me had shifted. I carried the weight of that fragment with me, like a hidden mark no one else could see. Even at work, I couldn't concentrate. The buzz of fluorescent lights above my desk made me flinch because for a moment I thought it was the hum. My coworkers' voices blurred into noise. Everything felt unreal, like the edges of reality had grown thin and fragile. That evening, I told myself I wouldn't touch the computer. I'd eat, shower, sleep early, and try to forget. But when I sat in the dark with the TV on, I caught myself staring at the static between channels longer than I should have. The random noise on the screen twisted into shapes I swore I recognized. The chair, the figure, fragments of the same room. I blinked, and it was gone, but the impression lingered. I shut the TV off immediately, but the silence that followed was worse. The hum was still there, faint, vibrating just under the surface of everything. By the second night, the dream started. I was back in front of the video, though in the dream the static filled my room, crawling up the walls and spilling across the floor. I saw myself sitting at the chair in the video, the figure standing behind me, closer this time. Its shape bent unnaturally, like the frame itself couldn't contain it. Just before it reached for me, I jolted awake, gasping, my sheets tangled around me like restraints. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, an email notification. Groggy and shaken, I reached for it, only to freeze when I saw the sender that IT was from an address I didn't recognize. no subject line. The body of the message was empty except for one line. Fragment underscore 02 is waiting. The invitation for a long moment, I just stared at the email. My thumb hovered above the screen, hesitant to scroll, to touch anything, as though the words themselves might burn me. Fragment underscore 02 is waiting. No greeting, no explanation, no signature. Just that. The rational part of me screamed that this was impossible. No one should know about my search, about what I'd found. But deep down, I felt something colder. Whoever sent this email had been watching. They knew exactly where to find me. And worse, they knew what I was looking for. I locked my phone and tossed it onto the nightstand as though that would undo it. But the message was branded into my thoughts, repeating itself in rhythm with my pulse. I tried pacing the room. I tried turning on the TV. I even tried calling an old friend just to hear a familiar voice. Nothing worked. The thought of that waiting fragment gnawed at me, louder and louder, until I finally gave in. My hands trembled as I unlocked the phone and opened the email again. There was a single hyperlink beneath the line I hadn't noticed before, buried in a mess of blank space. It wasn't blue or underlined, just plain text that shifted into a link only when I touched it. My stomach dropped. Every instinct told me to delete the message and walk away, but it felt like the choice had already been made for me. I tapped it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then my browser opened to another barebones page, this one even emptier than before. In the center was a single download option, fragment underscore 02.avi. I couldn't click it yet. I stared at the screen, my reflection faintly visible in the glass, and realized how haggard I looked. My eyes were bloodshot, my skin pale from sleepless nights. I looked like someone being consumed from the inside out, and maybe I was. A part of me wondered if that was the point of these fragments, if they weren't meant to be watched so much as absorbed. Was I being lured deeper, step by step, until there was no part of me left untouched? The thought made me shiver, but it didn't stop me from saving the file. I sat there in the glow of my phone, the download complete, the file waiting for me in storage. The silence of the room pressed closer, almost unbearable, as if the shadows themselves were leaning in to listen. I told myself I wouldn't open it tonight, that I'd wait until morning, with the sun up, when everything felt less suffocating. But I already knew I was lying. Sleep would never come now, not until I saw what waited inside fragment underscore 02. Fragment underscore 02. I lasted barely an hour before I broke. The file sat there in my phone's storage like a live wire, humming at the edges of my awareness. Every attempt to distract myself, scrolling social media, pacing the room, trying to eat, failed within minutes. Eventually, I gave up the pretense. I slipped on my headphones, sat cross-legged on my bed in the dark, and pressed play. The video opened with silence. No static this time, just a dim, steady image of the same room I had glimpsed before. The wooden chair remained in the center, but something was different. The angle of the camera had shifted slightly, closer now, as though whoever recorded this wanted me to focus on the details. Dust floated in the still air, catching faint streaks of light that seemed to come from nowhere. The room looked older, rotting, plaster cracked on the walls, mold creeping into the corners. First, the chair was empty. I leaned forward, straining to catch any movement. The silence dragged on for so long that I almost convinced myself this fragment was nothing but scenery. Then, without warning, the hum began, lower than before, a deep vibration that rattled my headphones and made my chest ache. My stomach turned cold. The screen flickered, and the figure appeared again, just behind the chair. This time, I saw it more clearly. Its body was tall, impossibly thin, as though it had been stretched to fit inside human skin. Its face, if you could call it that, was wrong, blurred by distortion, yet I could tell it wasn't merely static. The features seemed to shift whenever I tried to focus, slipping in and out of forms that didn't belong together. The figure didn't move, but I felt its attention sharpen. It wasn't just standing in that room. It was looking through the screen. At me, the hum deepened into a pulsating rhythm, like a slow heartbeat. My own pulse matched it, sinking until I couldn't tell which was which. Then the camera twitched, a sudden lurch closer to the chair. For the first time, I noticed something carved into the wood of its backrest, letters, rough and uneven. I squinted, leaning in, and froze when I realized what they spelled. My name. The screen went black. The name on the chair. I don't remember closing the video. One moment, the screen was black. The next, I was staring at my phone's reflection, my face pale and sweat slick. My name burned in my mind, carved into that wooden chair as if it had always been waiting for me. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself it was a coincidence, that the letters had only resembled my name because I wanted them to. But the longer I sat there, the less convincing that lie became. Someone, or something, had put me in that video. That night, sleep wasn't even an option. Every creak of the house, every sigh of the wind outside felt amplified, as though the world was conspiring to remind me I wasn't alone. I kept my lamp on, but the shadows stretched unnaturally, moving in ways they shouldn't when I wasn't looking directly at them. At one point, I swore I heard the faint hum again, leaking through the silence of the room, and I pressed my hands against my ears until they hurt. The sound was inside me now. I couldn't escape it by morning. I was unraveling. Coffee didn't touch the exhaustion that pressed behind my eyes. I stumbled through the day like a ghost, convinced people on the street were staring at me too long, their faces slightly blurred when I looked back. At work, I caught myself doodling the shape of the wooden chair on scraps of paper without realizing it. My boss asked me a simple question, and I couldn't even register the words. All I heard was the low thrum of static, as if the world around me was decaying into the same noise that lived inside those fragments. When I finally dragged myself home, I found the chair waiting. Not physically, not in the room itself, but in the reflection of my darkened TV screen. For a split second, I saw it there, faint, flickering, as though the video had followed me. I spun around, my breath caught in my throat, but the room was empty. Still, the reflection lingered in my mind's eye long after I turned on the TV to drown it out with meaningless noise. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't convince myself it hadn't been real. Later that night, just as I began to doze off on the couch, my phone buzzed again. Another email. My stomach dropped before I even picked it up because I already knew what I'd see. No subject line, no explanation, just one line of text that made my skin crawl. You're sitting in the wrong chair. The response, I stared at the email for what felt like hours. The words, "You're sitting in the wrong chair," seared into my vision. My first instinct was to delete it, to throw my phone across the room and pretend it had never arrived. But fear twisted into something sharper: anger. Whoever was sending these fragments knew too much. They knew my name. They knew where I sat. And worst of all, they knew how easily I would follow their breadcrumbs. I couldn't just sit back anymore. I typed a reply with shaking hands. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" Then, with a mix of dread and defiance, I hit send. The response came almost immediately. No typing delay, no pause, just instant. The email refreshed, and a new message appeared, as though it had been waiting the whole time. Not who. Watcher. That name struck me like a punch. The same username I'd seen buried in the old forums. My breath hitched as I scrolled further, but there was nothing else in the email. Just that word, repeated once more, this time in bold. Watcher. I wanted to believe this was some elaborate prank, but that explanation no longer fit. Whoever, or whatever, Watcher was, they had been circling this video for years, scattering fragments across the internet like bait. And now, they had me hooked. Against my better judgment, I fired back another message. Why me? My chest tightened as I watched the three dots blink for a heartbeat, as though someone, or something, was typing on the other side. The reply was a single attachment, a video file labeled fragment_03.avi. My phone slipped in my grip, nearly hitting the floor. I didn't want to open it. Every instinct screamed that this was a step I couldn't undo, a threshold that once crossed would pull me too far. But curiosity cut through the fear like a knife. I stared at the file icon, the familiar pit forming in my stomach, the phantom hum already stirring in my ears as though it had leaked through the attachment itself. The room felt smaller, pressing inward, waiting for me to make a choice. That my thumb hovered over the file, trembling. A single thought echoed in my mind, chilling me more than anything else. If Watcher had been waiting all these years for me to come back, then maybe I was the one who had been chosen all along. Fragment_03. I told myself I wouldn't open it. I left the phone face down on the coffee table, tried drowning out the silence with the hum of the fridge, the creak of pipes in the walls, anything to anchor me to the ordinary. But it didn't work. The longer the file sat there, the more I felt it pulsing through the air, as though it wasn't just stored on my phone, but inside me. By midnight, I was pacing, sweating, whispering to myself like a lunatic, don't, don't, don't. And then, inevitably, I did. The video started differently this time. No static, no empty chair. Instead, the screen lit up to show a long, narrow hallway lined with peeling wallpaper. The air in the footage looked heavy, dust swirling in the light of a single dangling bulb. The hum was already there, faint but steady, like a heartbeat beneath the silence. Slowly, the camera drifted forward, advancing down the hall with unsteady movements. I leaned closer, dread curling in my stomach, because the closer it moved, the more I realized the hallway looked familiar. Halfway through, my breath caught. On the left side of the hall, crooked against the wall, was a door. My door. The warped frame, the faded number stenciled above it. It was the exact entrance to my apartment. I froze, a cold rush of fear rooting me in place. The camera lingered on it, panning slowly, deliberately, as if daring me to admit the truth. My throat tightened, my mind screaming at me to shut the video off, but my finger wouldn't move. It was like the footage had me pinned. Then the camera continued forward, past my door, deeper into the hall I didn't recognize. At the end of it stood the chair, the same one from the earlier fragments, its backrest scarred with scratches, the carving of my name still etched deep. The figure was there too, waiting, taller now, clearer, its blurred face flickering like a broken signal. For the first time, it moved, its head tilting, a slow, unnatural angle that made my stomach lurch. And then it raised one hand, impossibly long fingers curling as it gestured to the chair. The screen cut to black, but the hum didn't stop. It grew louder, deeper, vibrating through my phone, through my chest, filling the room as though the sound itself had spilled into reality. I dropped the phone, but the hum followed me, pressing into my skull until I could barely think. Somewhere in that roar, beneath the layers of distortion, I heard words, not spoken, but formed within the sound. Sit. The chair, the hum never stopped. It followed me into every corner of my apartment, vibrating beneath the walls, rattling in my teeth, suffocating every thought that wasn't about the chair. I unplugged my modem, smashed my phone against the floor until the screen cracked, but it didn't matter. The fragments had burrowed too deep. They weren't files anymore. They were inside me. Each breath I took was threaded with static. Each blink came with flashes of the hallway. The figure, the beckoning hand up EY the second day. I stopped pretending I could ignore it. My reflection in the mirror looked worse than the figure itself. Sunken eyes, lips pale, a shadow of someone who hadn't slept or eaten properly in days. I tried leaving the apartment, but the world outside felt wrong. People's faces blurred at the edges, streetlights flickered in sync with the hum, and every time I looked back at my building, I saw the hallway from the video stretched impossibly long. Somehow, I knew the video wasn't showing me a place. It was showing me where I was heading. That night, I returned to the couch and sat in silence, staring at the darkened TV. My body felt heavy, like it was no longer mine. When the hum surged louder, rattling picture frames on the wall, I knew it was time. I didn't press play, there was no need. The static washed across the screen on its own, and the hallway appeared again, waiting. My chest tightened, but my legs moved anyway, carrying me toward the set as if pulled by invisible strings. I in the glass reflection, the chair stood behind me. Not on the screen, behind me. My breath hitched, my body locked. But when I turned, it was there in the center of my living room, identical down to the carved letters of my name. The figure loomed just beyond it, its blurred face trembling as though it couldn't hold itself together in this world. Its hand rose once more, that impossibly long finger curling toward the seat. The command was louder this time, splitting my skull open with sound. Sit. That I wish I could say I resisted, that I screamed, ran, fought back. But the truth is simpler and worse. My knees bent before I even made the choice, lowering me into the chair that had been waiting all along. The moment I touched the wood, the hum ceased. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. The screen went black. The figure vanished. But in that silence, in that perfect stillness, one truth settled over me like a shroud. I hadn't found the video. The video had found me. And now I was part of it.